Hey guys, Manic here with Manic Conspiracies. Today we are going to be talking about the lost colony of Roanoke. And I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard Roanoke because of the fact that American Horror Story literally did its sixth season on the whole lost colony of Roanoke. So today we're going to talk about Roanoke, the lost colony, and the conspiracy theories that surround Roanoke. So basically, one of America's history's enduring mysteries is the lost colony of Roanoke. It was established in 1585 as an English attempt to create a permanent settlement in North America. Roanoke was found abandoned by 1590. So that was only a 5-year difference. There may have been many theories to explain what happened to the missing colonists, but there hasn't been any success in determining the fate of the 116 people who seemingly disappeared without a trace. In 1584, Queen Elizabeth I gave Sir Walter Raleigh a royal charter to colonize North America to establish a base from which England could raid Spanish treasure fleets coming their South and Central American colonies. Raleigh sent the first expedition to explore the eastern coast of North America. It landed on Roanoke Island and established good relations with the Croatoans, the Native Americans living on the island. The expedition brought 2 Croatians, or however you pronounce it, back to England with them, and the natives explained how to live on the island. Armed with this new information, Raleigh organized a second expedition, which was a disaster. There were tensions between this group and the Native Americans, and there was much fighting between them because the Indians were angry that the English were exploiting the land of resources. Many of this expedition returned to England. Only a small group of 15 men remained behind to protect the fort and Raleigh's claim to Roanoke Island. So in 1587, Raleigh set a third and final expedition, making his friend John White leader and governor of the colony. This third voyage was different in that it included women and children, which indicated that they meant to settle the land. When White and his group arrived, all they found of the previous small group of 15 was one skeleton. John White reestablished good relations with the Croatoan, but some Native Americans that the previous travelers had struggled with refused to meet him. John White returned to England in late 1587 and planned to return with more supplies because, again, he was now the governor of this colony, so he was coming back to live here. He was coming back to actually stay on the island, in the colony. The Spanish Armada's assault on England in 1588 delayed his return. The ensuing war between Spain and England made it difficult for White to go back to Roanoke. He couldn't gather supplies and book passage back to the colony for 3 years. He finally returned on August 18th of 1590, his granddaughter's 3rd birthday. Roanoke was completely deserted. There was no one there and no sign of a struggle, a battle, or any foul play. Which is very strange because, again, there was a colony of 116 people, and they just disappeared with no signs of foul play, nothing. Okay? The only clues left that gave any hint to the fate of the lost colony of Roanoke was the word Croatoan, carved into a fence post, and the letters Crow carved into a tree. All of the buildings had been disassembled, so the people had not been forced to leave in a hurry. The colonists were instructed to carve a Maltese cross in a tree if they were compelled to leave against their will. There was no Maltese cross found at the site. White assumed, with all of these clues, that the colonists had moved to the nearby Croatoan Island, but bad weather prevented he and his men from going to look for them. His men wouldn't go with him to look for the missing colonists, and they left the next day. Since the colonists disappeared in 1590, there have been investigations into what happened at Roanoke. In 1602, Sir Walter Raleigh decided to find out what happened himself. He hired his own ship and paid his sailors wages so that they would focus on the mission. They reached Virginia, but a severe storm forced them to go back to England before they were able to reach Roanoke Island. When he arrived back in England, Rayleigh was arrested for treason before he could organize any more missions back to Roanoke. So the whole thing's really weird so far, you know. I mean, this guy from England, you know, he's a sir, he's pretty high up there. He has tried twice now to go back, and something happens and he can't go look for them. So then, in 1603, another fact-finding mission to Roanoke led by Bartholomew Gilbert ended in disaster. A storm blew the expedition off course, and the team that went ashore was attacked and killed by Native Americans. The remaining crew returned to England without having any information on the colonists of Roanoke. It seemed as if there would never be a definitive answer to the mystery of the disappearance. Over the years, there have been many theories and hypotheses put forth to help try to explain this long-standing mystery. They range from the potentially true to just outlandish. Like with all, some incorporate spiritual beliefs, while others use strictly scientific and historical data to solve the mystery. While many explanations have been put forth, these are the most common theories that have been discussed that could help us figure out what happened to the people of Roanoke. The colonists were absorbed into local Indian populations or captured as slaves. The most popular theory is that the colonists left Roanoke and that they sought shelter with other Indian tribes. Because remember, they were Native American tribes there. There were many documented sightings of Europeans and their influence in the years following the disappearance of the settlers. And the theory goes that these Europeans could have been the missing settlers of their descendants. The Zunigai map, I'm sorry I butchered that, drawn by a Jamestown settler named Francis Nelson in 1607, documents 4 men that came from Roanoke living among the Iroquois tribe. In the early 1600s to the middle 1700s, European colonists claimed to have met gray-eyed Indians who claimed to have been descended from white settlers. In 1696, French Huguenots left records of meeting blonde-haired, blue-eyed Indians soon after their arrival along the Tar River. In 1709, John Lawson, in his book A New Voyage to Carolina, records Croatonans living on a Croatona island who had claimed that they used to live on Roanoke Island, and they claimed to have had white ancestors. William Strachey also claimed to have seen Pakarnik and the Okahoan Indians living in 2-story stone houses that the English showed them how to build. The main theory is that the settlers of Roanoke moved to Croatoan Island and joined with the Native Americans living there. Croatoan Island is located just south of Roanoke Island and was the home of the Croatoan Indians. The settlers had good relationships with them, so we can assume that the settlers were absorbed into the tribe. This theory has never been substantiated, but with the clues left at Roanoke, plus the good relations that were standing between the settlers and the Indians at the time of their disappearance, it is all we have to go on. There is another theory that the colonists joined with the Croatoans and they relocated inland along the Alligator River, slightly inland from Roanoke Island. An archaeological site of settlements included burial grounds has been discovered there. The coffins at the burial grounds have Christian markings on them, but there was no previous record of any settlement or the grave site in this location. There's no definitive evidence that the site belonged to the missing Roanoke settlers, though. While the prevailing theory is that the people of Roanoke merged with the local Indian populations, it is just as possible that it wasn't a happy ending. Considering that the people were never heard from again, it is just as likely that they encountered hostile Native American tribes. They could have been taken as slaves. William Strachey, the Secretary of Jamestown, Virginia, claimed in 1612 that he saw Europeans, 4 men, 2 boys, and 1 girl, living with the Eno tribe as slaves, and that they were forced to beat copper. There's no evidence, though, that these Europeans were descendants of the Roanoke settlers. With the development of technology, solving the mystery of what happened at Roanoke is more possible now than ever before with DNA testing. We can now test the Native American peoples who claim to be descended from the Roanoke settlers to see if it is in fact true. In 2007, the Lost Colony of Roanoke DNA Project was founded by Roberta Estes using her private DNA testing company to see if the missing colonists did in fact merge with local Native American populations using historical records, migration patterns, and oral histories. The project offers DNA testing to people who think they might be descended from the people of Roanoke using Y chromosomes, autosomal DNA and mitochondrial DNA to make the determination. So far, DNA testing for Native Americans has not been able to identify any Roanoke descendants. So that's kind of out. 2 is Croatoan. The word Croatoan was carved into a fence post at the abandoned colony, and its presence at the site is one of the most confusing mysteries of Roanoke. Why was it found there? The road Croatoan is also connected with other mysterious happenings over the centuries, each one more puzzling than the last. Right before he died, Edgar Allan Poe disappeared for a short time. When he was seen again, he was delirious, and his final state of delirium before his death, allegedly one of the last words Edgar Allan Poe said was Croatoan. Poe's official cause of death is unknown, and his medical records and death certificates are lost, so we will never know what happened to him the night he died. The word has also appeared at several other famous disappearances in the 19th and 20th centuries. In 1888, the stagecoach robber Black Bart carved the word into the wall of his cell before he was released from prison. He was never seen or heard from again. It was found in Amelia Earhart's journal after she disappeared in 1937. The last bed that horror writer Ambrose Bierce slept in before he disappeared in Mexico in 1913 had the word Croatoan carved into one of the posts. In 1921, Croatoan was written on the last page of the logbook of the ship Carroll A. Deering when it crashed on Cape Hatteras near Croatoan Island. The ship was missing its entire crew. It's pretty fucking random. The colonists were murdered. That's the third theory. In 1607, Captain John Smith tried to uncover what happened at Roanoke. He claimed that Chief Padawan told him that he killed the people of the colony to retaliate against them for living with another tribe that he refused to ally with him. Allegedly, Padawan showed Smith items he took from Roanoke to support his story, including a musket barrel and a bass mortar and a pestle. By 1609, the story reached England, and King James and the Royal Council blamed Powhatan for the missing colonists. William Stachey seemed to back up the story, confirming the slaughter with his investigation in his work, The History of Travelly into Virginia, Britannia, or however you pronounce it. Powhatan claimed that he ordered the killings because there was a prophecy that would be conquered and overthrown by people from that area. Contemporary historians and anthropologists dispute this story because there were never any bodies or archaeological evidence found to support the claim, but it has persisted for more than 400 years. Recently, author and researcher Brandon Fulham has re-examined Smith and Starchy's sources and has suggested that the Powhatan massacre could have been the 15 settlers left behind from the second expedition, still leaving the mystery of the Roanoke unsolved. So basically he's saying that he probably did kill the 15 leftover settlers, but not the other ones. Another possible theory is that the Spanish murdered the settlers. England and Spain were in the middle of a war when people of Roanoke disappeared. When the Spanish Armada attacked England in 1588, White was in England trying to organize supplies and find a way back to the colony. All of the country's available ships were commandeered to fight the Spanish, and the war with Spain delayed White's return to the colony with supplies for another 3 years. At the time the settlers disappeared, there were Spanish troops present in Florida. One of the issues that Spain and England went to war over was the colonization of the Americas. There is a theory that Spanish troops secretly traveled north and eliminated the English colony. The Spanish were known for being offensive against other European powers who tried to settle in the Americas. They attacked forts located in South Carolina and Florida throughout the 16th century. However, a Spanish attack on Roanoke colony is doubtful because no bodies were ever found, and the Spanish were still looking for Roanoke in 1600, 10 years after its colonists went missing. Also, the settlement's fortifications were dismantled when White returned in 1590, indicating an evacuation, not a violent attack. So 4 is cannibalism. There are 2 theories about cannibalism. Either the people of Roanoke were the victims of cannibals, or they had to resort to it to stay alive. Other Native American tribes were hostile to outsiders, and they weren't on good terms with the settlers or the Croatoans. One of these groups could have been cannibals. There were never any bodies found at the settlement, but that doesn't mean anything, because the bones could have been used for healing remedies by grinding them into a powder. That's scary to think about. The people of Roanoke could have been picked off gradually, or cannibals could have kidnapped them and disposed of them in that way. The fact that no bodies were found sounds like a time-consuming endeavor, but White was gone for 3 years. If cannibals attacked the settlers, they had more than enough time to dispose of all the bodies. There is no definitive evidence that any Native American tribes in the area were cannibals, so this is a less likely theory than the people of Roanoke becoming cannibals themselves. There is no definitive evidence that any Native American tribes in the area were cannibals, so that's just repeated. In 1609, in the settlement of Jonestown, Virginia, the colony had to resort to cannibalism to stay alive. It is possible that the people of Roanoke had to as well. The settlers could have been hungry enough to see cannibalism as a viable option. During the investigations into the disappearance of the settlers, local tribes mentioned that there were internal conflicts in Roanoke before everyone disappeared. The people could have resorted to cannibalism because they were hungry and killed themselves off. An outlandish theory, but an interesting one nonetheless, and something that, cannibals do exist. Okay, the fifth is disease. Disease is another theory that has much historical basis to support it. The Roanoke colonists could have encountered a New World disease that they had no immunity to fight. The theory goes that the colonists could have caught a good old-fashioned plague that presented with symptoms of delirium, paranoia, or madness. Considering the reports from the Native American tribes in the area of internal warfare in the Roanoke settlement before everyone disappeared, this seems like a viable theory. And I just want to pause and say, for those of you who have seen American Horror Story, the Roanoke season, they did kind of incorporate all these different things. And I think it is kind of interesting. Considering the reports from Native American tribes in the area of internal warfare in the Roanoke settlement before everyone disappeared, this seems like a very viable theory. The healthy could have wanted to get rid of those who were sick because they were afraid of getting sick themselves. This easily could have escalated into a violent situation. Once the disease hit, the healthy population could have sectioned off into smaller groups and left the colony, leaving the sick to die. That certainly could explain the multiple sightings of Europeans in local Indian populations in later years after the colony disappeared. The only problem with this particular theory, along with the rest of them, is what happened to the bodies of the sick. What happened? So 6, and personally what I believe truly happened to Roanoke is the witchcraft theory. There are 2 theories involving witchcraft. The Croatoan either executed the colonists as witches, or the colonists were victims of witches who live in North Carolina woods. The Croatoans believed in witches and witchcraft. Their definition of witches were people who use black magic to commit evil acts in everyday life. While there is no evidence that the Croatoan executed witches, or that the Croatoan accused the people of Roanoke of witchcraft, they were known for condemning dangerous outsiders. They easily could have blamed the people of Roanoke for spreading diseases to which the Croatoan had no immunity. The Croatoans and other Native American tribes tell legends of witches who live in the North Carolina woods, who use black magic to hurt other people. There is a story that the people of Roanoke became the victims of these witches when they left the island, and that is why they were never heard from again. 7 is also something I believe could have happened as well, and that is supernatural/religious explanations. There may have been many supernatural and religious explanations that incorporate Native American belief systems. There is no scientific basis for these theories, but they are still taken very seriously by the Native American populations as explanations on what happened to the missing settlers of Roanoke. They mainly involve around Native American spirits that help explain away not only the behavior of the colonists before they disappeared, but also why the colonists disappeared without a trace. Native Americans believe in a wild spirit in the form of a beast called a wendigo. When people resort to eating human flesh, as in the case of cannibalism, their bodies are taken over by a wendigo. If the people of Roanoke resorted to cannibalism, then according to this belief, they are still alive roaming the woods of North Carolina in the form of wendigos. The Croatoan belief system includes a spirit on the island that had the power to absorb humans into the landscape. If the spirit was offended or angered, it would turn people into trees, animals, stones, or any other part of the land. If the colonists were exploiting resources or abusing the land, it could have angered the spirit. This means that the people of Roanoke didn't disappear at all, they were just absorbed into the land. That's kind of fucking far-fetched to me. The Croatoan also believed in the reptilian devil of the woods, an evil spirit that could attach itself to people. That spirit made people violent, greedy, and paranoid. The Croatoan believed that the reptilian spirit had possessed the settlers once they started to turn on each other after White left for England to retrieve more supplies. And the last theory of Roanoke is dare stones. From 1937 to 1940, a series of stones were discovered that supposedly tell the story of what happened to the Roanoke colonists. They are called the dare stones because they were most apparently written by John White's daughter, Eleanor Dare. Most historians consider the dare stones a hoax, although many historians believe the first stone is authentic. In 1937, a tourist found an inscribed stone and brought it to the Emory University to be examined for authenticity. Dr. Haywood Pierce, a professor of American history, didn't claim that the stone was authentic, but it didn't contradict what was known at the time. The inscription was consistent with the phrasing of the time, and the colonists would have had tools to carve such a message. The inscriptions on the stone stated that Eleanor's husband and daughter were dead and asked whoever found the stone to tell her father. The inscription read, Ananias Dare and Virginia went hence unto heaven, 1591, Anye Englishman shoe, John White Govar via. The other side of the stone reported that only 7 of the Roanoke colonists were still left alive, and Native Americans murdered the rest. It was signed Eleanor White Dare. In 1940, 47 more stones have been found dating until 1599. A stone dated from 1592 claims that the survivors of Roanoke are safe, living with a tribe in the Noche Valley in Georgia. One dated from 1598 claims that Eleanor Dare had married in the local chief. Another stone claimed that she had given birth to the chief's daughter, and the tribe was angry about it, and Eleanor requested that her father bring the girl back to England with him. A stone dated from 1599 stated that Eleanor Dare had died, and that she had a daughter named Agnes that survived her. So it's very creepy, and still to this day, we don't know what happened to the missing 116 Roanoke colonists. Personally, American Horror Story Roanoke wasn't my favorite season, but I would say after watching my conspiracy video of Roanoke, if you haven't seen it, go check it out, because it'll give you more insight into the different conspiracy theories that they have. So what do you guys think? Like and subscribe as always, and let me know down in the comments what you guys think. What conspiracy theory do you believe happened to Roanoke? Where do you think they are? Do you think they're still alive? I mean, clearly not, because this was from the 1500s. But do you think they lived? Do you think they all died, or do you think they lived? Who knows? So let me know. Peace out.